Welcome. This is part three, I believe, in our cyber resiliency um, sessions that we're doing, partnering with Commvault on this. Today is all about clean room recovery, which we'll explain here in a second, but let me get a few logistics out of the way as well. First, most of you know about Eagle, but I'm going to do our 30 minutes or 30-second slide here real quick. We are about securing the data. It's all about the data. It always has been for us. And making sure that that data is secure and able to be recovered in the event of something happening that's bad, right? Obviously physical challenges are always there with fire, flood, and everything else that's happening in the world. But cyber resiliency is very important as well. So that defense in depth is important. Recovery in depth requires a lot of design in depth, and that's what Eagle does for a living. Patrick and Anthony are key to that on the pre-sale side, and appreciate those efforts. So really our philosophy is if you're not looking at how all the pieces work together, you're not doing it right, because there's a lot of advantages of that whole better together type of philosophy. So security is always first. Get rid of the complexity. We like to make simple solutions that work really, really well and very affordable. So that's kind of our go-to-market. As the guys call it, I'd like to get on my soapbox a little bit as well. So the only thing worse than not having good tools is not using those tools properly. And Commvault is no exception to that. We've been partnered with Commvault for over 20 years. We love the product, but you have to use it correctly. And what we've been doing over the last couple years is a Commvault hardening engagement. And we did some review of our accounts with the help of Gail, our director of marketing, and found that several of you have not engaged us yet. So what is a Commvault hardening? It's really taking all of the security features that Commvault has built in and all of the policies that are available within Commvault and making that more resilient. A lot of people don't have all the knobs turned the right way, don't have all the buttons pushed that they need to have pushed to make Commvault as resilient as possible. If I can't recover the data with that last line of defense, which is Commvault, I'm in a bad situation. So I really encourage you to reach out to me. We have some great engineers that have put together some great methodologies, along with some Commvault best practices. Reach out to me. My email address is down there. I'd love to have a one-on-one. And since I'm not on the sales side, I get to offer a little bit of an extra discount and get you in line. We're going to be promoting this in a week, so it'd be good to get a placeholder. I encourage you to make Commvault the best that it can be with that hardening engagement. So that's my soapbox. Anthony, how did I do?
Did good.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
It's all a real good point, Dave. I'd like to point out that not only do we turn the knobs right, but we're also obfuscating the fact that we're using Commvault at all. I think that's a real big part of our hardening, is hiding what's in our tool chest so that we don't get pointed attacks by bad actors. So that's a big part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, Patrick and Anthony, you both met them. They're both pre-sales engineers for us, architects. They're really doing that design in depth day in and day out for us. And we also have Jason from Commvault. Jason, you want to take a second and introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. Thanks, David. My name is Jason Cray. I'm a principal here at Commvault. Been with Commvault about 2 years, but prior to that, I was in the field for over 2 decades. In that time, I focused on data protection, Commvault being one of those, and primarily cyber recovery, where I've got to actually help hundreds of clients recover from cyber attacks.
Yeah. Well, great. Jason, we appreciate the help. Welcome today. We've done these marketing events and they're really educational. We're trying to keep them very technical focused, and we're trying to keep them to 30 minutes. So it sounds like I'm an auctioneer right now, but I apologize for that. But we do like the interaction. So all four of us will probably interrupt a little bit here to get us started. Ransomware obviously is the big thing, and what we've seen with our customer base. They call us and say, hey, I'm under attack. What's going on? The first thing we want to do is make sure that backup environment is secure. The bad actors are becoming great backup administrators, unfortunately. They understand the applications. They understand Commvault, Veeam, Cohesity, all of those players out there. And so it's very important that, again, go through that hardening engagement that we talked about with Commvault. But other things that we can do, and that's what we'd like to talk about today. We're talking about clean room, some different options out there for where to keep the data. Patrick, Anthony, talk a little bit about air gapping data and what's available today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we're trying to your point, Dave, is we're trying to create that resilience, that recovery and depth. And so having multiple copies of our data, not only in our data centers or in the cloud where that data is, but that air gap, that virtual air gap or that literal air gap, quite honestly, where we create an access gap so that so an application, a user, a bad actor cannot access the back end systems associated with the storage of that backup, creating a level of immutability that we're always looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, it's all about getting access to identity accounts. And once even a basic user gets compromised, being able to escalate to a domain admin is pretty easy and pretty quick for these guys. And so most people, for ease of management, obviously you have domain admin rights to be able to get into every part of your infrastructure. So the Commvault infrastructure, whether it's the servers, that type of infrastructure, as well as the storage. And so we go from this single pane, easy to manage. That's what everybody was shifting to. And then now it's like, oh, security. Actually, let's make a bunch of silos so I can't get over there without having a different account here. And so you see this shift that's happening, and that is really a part of air gapping, is getting credentials separated.
I was gonna say absolutely, Anthony. What I'm seeing with a lot of my clients, they just assume that everything's breached. They don't even try to figure it out at the start because it is so pervasive these days.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah. And even things like with your hyperscalers, you have, if you're bringing your own storage from a backup perspective, right, you're trying to create that immutable offline copy in a different storage location. What you still have is access to that storage account as well. When we start to talk about Air Gap Protect, we're going to talk about how great it is to kind of even just obfuscate the ability to access that data as well. We talk about dwell times and how long bad actors have been in the environment and what we should do from a retention standpoint. Anthony, you and I were talking a little bit about this with Jason earlier. We talked about what it takes to recover and what are our retention requirements and how do we meet those things with something like Air Gap Protect, which is that immutable backup storage copy that we're going to put in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah, I've been talking to customers more about this. They have retention. It might be 7 years, 2 years, whatever it might be. And it's like, does all of that have to be off-site? Is that a requirement based on litigation or, requirements? Well, are you doing that from a DR perspective? You might be replicating and getting it off-site to your second data center. But now we're talking more about a tertiary copy for this and, being able to recover when everything is compromised, to Jason's point. Do you really need 2 years of retention there, or could that be 30 days or that 14 days? Trying to figure out what that minimum viability is to get the business back up and running.
Yeah, I love that. I love that phrase, minimum viability, right? We're talking about what is the actual data that we need to bring back. That compliance data, that stuff that we need to maintain for 3 to 7 years. That's not really our interest in this immediate concern, right? We're not worried so much about that. So we do have the ability to create that AGP air gap copy for that retention data, but we can host it on a cooler tier, right? We have multiple options from an air gap protect standpoint that allows us to right size and fit the data that we need to recover quickly in a hotter tier and maybe some of that legacy data in a cooler tier.
Yeah, and one question I'll throw out just to discuss is if this is really writing in front of Azure or AWS or OCI, why don't I just bring my own storage and pay Azure directly?
Yeah. Hey, Jason, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, I mean, in theory, you could, but with AGP, we build in a couple different layers where to get AGP access, it's via a license key. So there is no direct connection between your environment, your users back to AGP. Because what I've seen in the past is clients do that and they assume that everything's secure, but unfortunately their users in their cloud get compromised, and then it's game over at that point.
Yeah, we're talking about identity domains again, right? I mean, what can be compromised will be compromised, and the fact that we don't have an identity as part of AGP because we're deploying this as part of your Commvault license, there is that identity threat has been mitigated there.
Yeah, it's back to kind of the obfuscation you were talking about. It's done through obfuscation because there is no way to even find those access security keys. Like I can't get an S3 browser and go look at the data and try to delete, modify, do anything like that. So
yeah, so we're talking about immutability, right? And the fact of the matter is we've had that conversation 1,000 different times on 100 different webinars, probably even, but we still continue to assess immutability as not a feature that you can turn on, but a design in a solution that we help you implement. In Air Gap Protect, the way that it's deployed, where that data is stored, the options that you have available really allows us to provide that immutability by design and not by a feature set.
And we're also sending daily backups to it. That's another thing, getting backups off-site, air-gapped almost immediately versus waiting for somebody to come pick something up, take it off-site. You get rid of some of those logistic headaches.
So one of the other things that Commvault brings to the table, one of those buttons that we press when we're doing some of the hardening engagements, is something called compliance lock. And it's the idea that a bad actor, should they gain access to your Commvault environment, can't go in and change your retention and delete your data on purpose. Compliance lock is always on Air Gap Protect copies. It's something we have to turn on manually for other copies, but as the default, as a rule, we recognize Air Gap Protect as a compliance lock enabled copy of our data at the jump. And that's not anything that we can turn off as well. So we're talking about writing a copy of our data to the cloud. That's how we're getting our data outside of our fault domain, for lack of a better term, outside of our data center, and allowing us to create an isolated copy to recover from. But the next thing we have to talk about is, where do we recover to in the event of that cyber incident? So we're going to mention clean room. We're going to talk about Commvault clean room recovery. And I really, if Commvault created clean room just so I could put this picture in a slide deck, I'd be super happy. You can see our good buddy Darren and a couple of our friends from Commvault, Kuzi and the guys.
Troy.
I just love that this was part of the marketing strategy for clean room, is to put Darren in this suit. So
it's
really,
a right size suit too, right? It
really
fits him well.
Extra medium, I think, is where he's at. But so clean room is not just about funny suits, right? We're talking about a concept, an isolated recovery outside of your data center, outside of your purview, so that you can test recoveries, so you can validate data associated with a cyber incident. But we're talking about doing this out of band, right? And so there's advantages to that. So let's talk about first of all what it looks like from a Commvault clean room recovery standpoint. What's the process? We got our data in Air Gap Protect already, right? That's our first step. We're going to harden our backups. We're going to make sure that we've gone through that hardening engagement. We've obfuscated the fact that we're using Commvault. We're taking those systems off the domain. And then we're going to set up our Commvault clean room configuration. And that relies on a couple of different things, right? Air Gap Protect, we need a copy of our data in the cloud, but we also need a place to land that data. And so when we're talking about cyber resiliency and testing of cyber resiliency, the cloud is a really great option for that, right? There's problems associated with doing test recoveries and really real incident recoveries into your on-prem data center. We want to discuss that a little bit real quick.
Yeah, I think one thought, you have all this hardware on site, you have a DR site. Why do I need somewhere else to practice recovery? That's one question I see. The other one is, why would I recover into the cloud when my workloads are on-prem? And, just from a couple of situations, when you think about an incident happening, especially depending on the profile size, you might get these 3-letter agencies that come in and kind of take over your environment. you're going to have yellow tape around everything that is on-prem that is potentially part of your authentication domain. Because to Jason's point, we have to assume that everything is compromised. And so even if you think you can spin up quickly, how quickly can you, or are you going to be allowed to actually start running in that environment? The idea of recovering into the cloud, into a clean room on demand, we know that environment is brand new. We're putting it in place as part of this recovery. You can get to, business, I guess, a lot quicker. And doing those
Sure.
testings ahead of time allow you to start figuring out some of the networking components and other things that you might need.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I know, Anthony, a lot of the questions I get is the yellow tape a thing of reality? Because it does seem pretty dramatic, but I can tell you, I have personally been privy to that exact behavior. So that it is a real thing. It does happen.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of people out there selling on-prem solutions for this, right? Hey, we'll sell you an entire new data center so you can do testing and, and isolate this network completely so that we can recover and do this periodic testing. Now, the CapEx associated with buying an entire new infrastructure to test against is pretty big, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that if we can use a cloud provider, something that's temporary, when we test our clean room, we spin those systems up. We're only being charged on the back end for the time that those systems are running, and they're dismissible, right? We can throw them away as we test, as we validate, or in the event of a cyber incident, we have the ability to migrate that data around at some point as well too. So a lot of different options from a recoverability standpoint in the cloud that we just can't do on-prem.
Yep, I agree. Now you're not having to worry about licensing the environment with the Broadcom tax that's on-prem. I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play here when you look at TCO. But to your point, you're able to build these recovery playbooks, test them out in an isolated bubble in a cloud provider, blow it away, try again. I mean, this rinse and repeat process, that's what the cloud is, one of the reasons the cloud is built for.
And the fact of the matter is if you can get muscle memory and a recoverability, like that's like doing exercise, right? We need to make sure we know how to perform our functions as administrators, and this is part of it. And this gives us a live fire exercise to do that with.
Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't state any of that any better. The clients that I have seen be the most successful are the ones who took testing seriously, and this helps dramatically with that process.
Yeah, if you don't test a DR plan, you don't have a DR plan, right? You're always going to find those gaps. And that's what testing is meant to do, is find the gaps, correct them, test again, rinse and repeat, to Patrick's point.
Yeah. And Dave, you're mentioning a DR plan. I will mention real quick the difference between cyber resilience and disaster recovery. Disaster recovery, it's a known quantity. We know what we need to do in those incidents. That's why we can prepare and pre-plan and pre-position that stuff. But we just can't do that with a cyber incident. We don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what we do know most of the time.
Yeah, so you have to assume that everything is compromised, essentially.
But that's just it. That's why we're talking about this today, is we don't know all those unknowns. But if we plan to not have to take that into account, again, assume everything is bad, then we do have a good plan. So that's what today's conversation, I think, is about. So
yeah, so we're going to do a little bit of a demo with Jason here in a few minutes. So I want to make sure that we get the slideware out of the way. But, we're talking about cyber resilience end-to-end copy, from backup copy to recovery, and how Air Gap Protect and Clean Room work together with that, and the integration of that. And the ability to configure that really quickly, is pretty important, especially since we're talking about testing, blowing away, testing and blowing away. That's got to be a quick, repeatable process that we can do automatically. And it's really just 3 steps from a configure AGP to getting clean room set up. We're talking about, the library gets set up from the license. You don't have to do that. So we're just setting up storage policy or plan copies. Then we're setting up the access to our clean room, right? Wherever that is, so we can do recoverability for that. And then we're doing the restore. Really easy stuff that it all fit. We talk about single pane and glass, but that's where we're managing this stuff within Commvault. Totally integrated into your backup and recovery workflow, the ability to test cyber resiliency.
Yeah, I love the on-demand that really is what gives it safe. You know, obviously a clean room is I can blow things up inside of this kind of sandbox idea. So you have that aspect to it because it's a bubble. It's outside of my production environment. I'm not going to break anything. But then at the other side of it is if I can bring this up on demand and run the playbook into this brand new on-demand environment, I also know that there is no traces of backdoors, you know, things to that extent that could become part of a reinfection.
Yeah. Clean room, make sure it's clean, right? We don't want to recover into a dirty environment. And clean room allows us to do that by spinning those things up.
Well, let's load some time for a demo here. We try to keep these to 30 minutes, so.
Yeah.
Jason, you want to take it away?
Sure will. All right. Absolutely. Okay, is the share coming through?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, so I figured I would start off today with the clean room recovery. We're all here pretty familiar with the Commvault interface. This is the interesting part of this. So the one thing we kind of hit on this is I don't typically like to talk about speed when you talk about cyber recovery, but there is some aspect of speed to this is how quickly you can get a new environment spun back up. So the first thing you would do is just log into the Commvault cloud portal, which I've already done to bypass some time here. And these are the typical 3 tiles that you would see. Now, to initiate a recovery, all you have to do is come over here to security posture, find your environment. Typically, you're just going to see yours. I have access to more, so I have to search for mine. That'll come up. And now we'll go to recovery validations. We do a lot of testing in ours, so our percentage isn't great because we try to break things, but this will reflect the recoveries that you've performed. So now we go into here. And this now is where we can start initiating the recovery. So from here, you'll see all of the backups that we've uploaded to the Commvault cloud. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about that. Is one of the things to help ensure you can recover is have that backup somewhere else. So that's one of the reasons why for clean room, a copy of the metadata is being uploaded to our environment. So the Commvault environment. So you can still do your normal DR backups, but this is another copy that's sent to ours and isolated.
Yeah, Jason, let's just be real clear about this. This is our DR ComServe backups. This is that SQL database dump that we do on a daily basis on our on-prem environments.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. So here you can see the ones that we've uploaded for this environment. Now to start recovery, I simply pick the one I want to recover, click the ellipsis, click start recovery. Now you can see here we have to enter an IP that's purely security. You could do public. Would never recommend it. Don't know why you would, but enter the IP addresses you're going to be accessing from and click submit. Now that starts a recovery of your control plane in our environment. Typically what we've seen is that's about 30 to 45 minutes. You'll get an email when it starts, and then you'll get an email when it finishes. And you can look over here in your recovery requests. Now, you'll see I have a last recovery already there. Once again, for sake of time today, I pre-staged this so we didn't have to wait. You'll see this have a progress bar when that recovery is going. And then you'll see a CS staged when it's finished. Now, to access that, I come down here and look at access details. So that's another question I get. So this is changed every time that an environment stood up. And we have a specific user, and that password is randomized each time also. The reason we do that is, back to our conversation earlier, we assume from the get-go that everything's compromised. So this new environment's recovered with previous users disabled, a new user created, and it's all in a read-only environment. That way, if on some odd chance the attacker did have access, they don't anymore. So
Awesome.
I'll cancel that, and then I'll go over here because I've already logged in to save us time. So what you're looking at here is our recovered control plane. This is running in our tenant. You can see the address here. It's running in our Azure portal. So this is a copy of our environment. We've got the data copied to AGP. So now let's look at clean room. Clean room consists of two things: a target, so where you're going to recover to, Azure, AWS, what region, you can set that up within this target. You can have as many as you want, but that's where the first definition takes place. Then we set our recovery groups. Now, recovery groups is where we can begin to do that mapping. We talked about minimum viable earlier also. Part of minimum viable is also defining what applications you need to minimally get the environment back up. So I would map these recovery groups to those applications because there's some consistency that we can apply when you do that. Because if we go into one here, we can see I already have one defined. That way we can go ahead and show you that it recovered. But if I want to add an entity, I just come here to add virtual machine, select, and I can select the machine to add. Now, you'll probably notice this repave option. One of the things we've also added is this idea that while we can scan and do all of the proper due diligence to make certain malware is not there, we can't ensure that there isn't an exploit, there isn't a bad account, something's on the machine. So we introduced repave, where you can select an image and have that automatically applied to the machine when it's recovered. So all we're doing is recovering the data for that machine.
Awesome.
So I'll do that just to show you. So I added it, it's ready to recover. I can recover all of these or a single entity, it all depends. I will go through the recover process, but I'll save us time from actual recovery. So on here, you can also see we have the ability to run threat scan or Windows Defender. You can also run both of them if you wanted. And what that does is that one final check that when you're recovering data to make certain that it is clean from any malware going in. Now,
those are really great integrations.
Yep, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Patrick.
No, I was saying that's a great integration.
Yeah, because that's one of the things we get asked all the time is how can we ensure that our data is clean? Well, those are the steps that we're starting to take to help ensure that. And you're going to see some more innovations coming in that space soon. I can't really talk about what, but I can tell you that we are working heavy in that space. The other thing is behind the scenes, we leverage something called auto scale. So you can't really see it here, but when this goes to recover, it's going to recover in your tenant, which I'll show you ours here in a second. When that recovery is initiated, we will automatically scale out the access nodes to be able to pull data to match your request. And then we will get rid of those access nodes as soon as they're over. So one thing that I get asked all the time is speed of recovery. And that's how we go to address that is we will scale as large as we need to meet the restore request and then get rid of it once it's done. So
yeah, that auto scale stuff is great. From a regular recovery perspective, it really shines here, right? That the ability to spin that stuff up with minimal configuration.
Yep. So you can see here the status of the machine. So this would all happen when you do a recovery. You can see it's recovered, it's ready, it's powered on, and I'll go over here just to show you. Here it is in our environment, and it's up, it's powered on, it's got an IP. I can access it if I want it to, but that's clean room recovery in the nutshell. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things we can get into, but it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. All the pre-post process stuff that we have available to us from a Commvault perspective, we can start to integrate those into those recovery workflows as well. But yeah, I really appreciate the time and allowing us to kind of take a look at what clean room recovery looks like inside the interface.